Hello everybody, welcome to another LEGO The Wheel of Time custom review. I am so excited to show you this next one, based on books 7 and 8, A Crown of Swords and The Path of Daggers. For those of you who are new to the series, I would invite you to check out the other videos. I believe that I've made at least 4 previous ones, and I just want to let you know, if you have not read the Wheel of Time book series, there may be spoilers, but I hope that you enjoy the review. As stated multiple times before, the idea of these builds was to replicate the book covers based on the Wheel of Time book series. So, on the left, we have A Crown of Swords, the book, and here's the build. And then book 8, The Path of Daggers, here is the build. If you have been following my Instagram, you've probably seen this build before, but rather than like my other builds that I've shown previous, where it's mostly based off of the front cover, this one is actually based more off of a panoramic view of the cover. So let me just open that up for you. There. And now you can kind of see a little more of what I was going for. So let us start off with the figures. So obviously, since Legos don't have arms that bend at the elbow, this is the closest I could get. But for Rand, I used a Han Solo hairpiece, a Legolas head from The Lord of the Rings. The body is from Pirates of the Caribbean, and just plain black pants. I gave him this body because even though, it looks very tattered and that tattoo, like he doesn't have that on his chest, from this perspective, you can kind of get the feel that his clothes, which are tattered, are just kind of like out of shape. They're not supposed to be like nice robes. You get this idea. Legolas's head, I thought, fit this pretty well for the angry head. But, so that's Rand. Then for the next figure, for the bird Trolloc, I used this mummy headpiece. I gave him Kylo Ren robes, just to kind of look like a plated armor, because it looks kind of black in the picture. I gave him some of these gunmetal arms, and then just a plain black waistband with gray pants. And his weapon is just a simple little lightsaber piece that has like the holes in them, so you can put that little hook. I mean, I know this looks more like a dagger, but I just kind of thought it was an interesting way of portraying that weapon. Next, when we compare like the book to the actual build, some of the main details I really wanted to get was this big black post. Honestly, like I'm not sure exactly what that is. Just an architectural design, I suppose, which I replicated right here with a torch piece, and it's just kind of inverted on this Lego pole. So we have here a bar piece. There we go. And you just stick it on. Right here was pretty interesting because this is actually a black stud with a hole in it. Sorry for the camera focus. There we go. So you just put it on backwards, so then it allows the attachment for such this strange build. I kind of thought that it was accurate to what we see on the cover, but nothing too fancy. But I think it looks pretty good for what it is. Then the next part that really stood out to me was these flames. I noticed there's like 1, 2, 3, 4 prongs of flame, I suppose. And so when it comes to that part, let's take that out. It's actually more of like a trick perspective, in that all these flames look like they're closer to the back, but these flames are just kind of spread around, exactly. I thought it was okay for what it needed to be. Then we have this weird little fountain, which is based off of this that you see on the spine of this book. It's also nothing too fancy. It was pretty interesting, though, to build. Oh man, it's really stuck on there. Alright, let's see if we can get a closer look. So what I actually did, because it was like a 3x3 based build, I had to kind of start from the ground up. So you have like a 2x3 plate here, a 1x3 plate, and then we have 2 of these 3 corner pieces. And then we stuck this little pin stud piece, black piece right there. Then we used different tiles to create the sense of roundness. I believe these come from like the Star Wars line, but I'm not positive on that. And even though it does give like a weird square edge, from a certain perspective, I feel like it gave a pretty good roundness to the build. So this is actually put on upside down, so it's more like a big giant top hat, really. And you just stick that on there and do that. The reason I built it upside down was to have this more complete like feeling of completeness, so that it would just look better if you angled it right. And there is the fountain. Probably the hardest part of this build was actually like the architecture idea, because like when you look at these different designs. Like, it's very blocky, but it's also like, I don't know, just kind of out of the ordinary because there's like so many organic spires. So I just kind of fiddled around with this back skyline. It's it has some interesting ideas. Like right here, for instance, that is a clip attached to another clip. Technically an illegal Lego build process, but it seems to work pretty well, pretty sturdy. Doesn't like fall over or anything. This building here, sorry, let me just fix that, there we go. Okay. It just has like a mishmash of pieces just to kind of fiddle around with it. Like this is like a side clip piece. Then you have some like other bricks, like arches, like I used for my Sith throne build, just to really angle it up. But I think from a certain perspective that you do get the feeling of different sized buildings. You do get a perspective of different sized buildings and like how far away they are. Like I feel like this one is closer than this one when you look at it directly. Yeah, so that's that part. Let's go on to the tower by removing the back of this. So this tower was pretty interesting because not only like was I trying to get like the right shape, but I really wanted to get the feeling of lighting as well. So really, with the build, it's based off of this tower here. Like I noticed that there was the archway, the triangle, and then there's even another little archway here. So I tried to replicate that. You have the archway, the triangle, and then another archway. But the biggest thing was trying to get the lighting so at least it looked like lighting and not a yellow building with gray stone. And the way I did that, I just kind of tried to angle the light so that when it would catch it, I suppose, there would be more shading at like the farther it goes back. Like right here, there's a little more shadow, but there's a little more light here. More light on this side than shadow, just to really give that perspective of this flame down here to just really make it shine. It was really tricky to build, especially like the top, because like the little fountain, it had a bit of a 3x3 foundation in order to really nail that feeling of getting this centered and yet having it even. Like it was really tricky. Going to the top, we can see like how there's this jumper plate, which holds all of this together. And that is what gives it like the more triangle feel, like a pyramid, where you go up inward a little more. And that's really all I have to say about that tower. The back of the build, without the background part at least, is pretty simple as well. Nothing too complicated. These Technic pin holes right here aren't really meant for any feature. They were just there. But like the other builds, it's on an 1818 and has a jumper plate. And finally, it has the most basic background of all of them, all of my 14 builds. It's just a bunch of black pieces with this half moon right here. And honestly, that was probably the trickiest part, was getting a piece that could look like it was hiding behind the building a little more. And there's just a basic number 7. There's no special design for the back of this one and for the other ones following because I'm still reading the series and I'm really trying to decide what would define each part of the series. But as you can see, that building lines up almost perfectly with the moon right there, in the same way that this has the moon line up with the building. And then the other part of this build was making sure that when I built that part, that having my figures would look accurate. So for instance, in the book cover, you see like how the moon is kind of like halfway curving across Rand's head. So with my figure, I had to make sure he was placed appropriately to get that look. So just repairing it a little bit. We raise Rand's arms a little bit so one arm is higher above the other. Maybe we could lower that one down and then just flip the hand around. I suppose that's the closest you can get to a 90-degree angle on a Lego figure. But then I put this jumper plate here so that he could be angled right, and then when you look at him directly head on, it almost pulls off that look. I suppose the hardest part about this build was, like I said, the buildings, but it was also different, and I really love it. Like, I think it's my second favorite build because of the panoramic style. You get more than just the front cover. So this Trolloc would go here, because he's kind of like looking like he's going to ambush Rand. And I believe that is pretty much it, aside from all of these like cobblestones. just a mix of a bunch of studs and rounded plates, just to really give the feeling of these cobblestones that you see on the cover. So that is book 7. In hindsight, book 8's build actually would have been pretty cool if I could have made it panoramic, because there's this challenging like head on the back, and that actually would have been pretty challenging to build, but it would have been fun. But this is probably simply laid out, self-explanatory of a set. I suppose let's look at the figures first. The crown, while not like completely accurate, was more to just depict Rand as the king of this book. So this is actually Thorin Oakenshield's body from the Lake Town set, but I flipped it around because I wanted to give the feeling of like a clean, noble look. I gave him a dragon sword because he obviously is the Dragon Reborn, even though this probably is the Heron marked sword like in the books. But anyway, I also gave him like one of the angrier faces of like a Hawkeye from the Avengers Age of Ultron. So yeah, that's definitely a look of an angry prophesied hero. But anyway, then we have his Shanchan spear, and it's obviously, you know, pretty big for a regular old spear, but it uses 2 stud pieces, and then it has one of these plant pieces that are easily inserted into like holes with bricks in them. Man, I'm sorry about the camera, guys. But anyway, then you just attach one of these jagged tooth pieces into this hole, stick them in, and then you get a short rod. So that way you get a full look at the Shanchan spear. And I think it's pretty accurate for what it's supposed to be, even if the scale is way off. So this soldier is supposed to represent the guard on Rand's right, and he's got red sleeves, brown gloves, and silver armor, which is slightly decorated. And I thought it was an okay look. I also tried to get the detail of his flag right. And while it's true that this flag has the symbol of the Aes Sedai and this flag doesn't, I think for what it's supposed to represent, it looks pretty good. You have like a golden kind of rod to keep the flag hinged up, and that uses the same thing along with a spear with a gold tip. And something that I can do if I don't want to make this like too straight, I could put a clip here so that it would make the flag pop out. But these old LEGO system flags are pretty posable and yet look pretty decent for what they're supposed to be. The same thing applies with this guard's flag. It has a dragon on it, and even though the colors aren't inaccurate, it's surprisingly, the dragons look pretty similar for what they are supposed to represent, like the shape of the tail, the curves. I don't know, I just thought it was the perfect little flag from the LEGO Systems Ninja theme. And both the guards have identical heads of Legolas again. They just seem to have that kind of look. I just kind of build figures as they look, even if, like, technically this would be Rand's head from the previous build, but I just try to build with what I see rather than, like, trying to keep a consistent accuracy. Because to be fair, these book covers aren't really consistently accurate either. I'd also like to note that when it comes to these builds, something I wish that I'd changed was that these were raised up a little more, kind of like how book 7 was. It just gives a sense of depth and also this feeling of, like, I don't know, just being able to see more of that world. I don't know, a little detail, and I suppose I'm pretty picky. But the horses, even though like on the book they're different like colors, like this one really should be a bit more of a black, I suppose, if I wanted to make him look darker than the rest. But I chose him because of the red reins, similar to this. That's why he has a red saddle. And then there's also this horse, which is posable, so his head can lean more forward than these two, who have their heads up. Obviously, the Lego horse is more accurate, like the new later ones, because of this big white spot, which you can see on this horse as well. And so you just do what you can with what you got. And those are the horse figures that I had. Now, when it comes to like the background, I admit it looks a bit clunky, but the cover is kind of vague because it's supposed to be like a mix of clouds and mountain. And with what I had, I just kind of went with it. These little guys are all like from the Lego Games series, like a whole bunch of soldiers and stuff. I almost displayed them this way, but the problem is not all of them are armored. Like you have some different figures, like from the Lego pyramids. Anyway, but they were just kind of there for a small background detail of Rand leading this army. Even though they're all on horses, I cannot build that many small horses. I'm sorry. But all the horses are positioned due to these jumper plates, and it's kind of like a barren ground, but that one would just go on there. You angle them sharply to the right, and then Rand's horse is a little more centered, so you put him like there about, and then this one follows from behind, so he would be about there. There's also no back design on this build, just the number 8 and what was meant to be some kind of design. But I have to admit, like, once I got like to, I don't know, books like 8 and 9, just finding the designs for these was just, it just wasn't top priority, I suppose. But this is the mountain, and I have to admit, without the clouds, it looks pretty decent for a mountain, at least a far away mountain. And then you get this, and it's just a whole, I don't know, compilation of a whole bunch of bricks. And this is probably one of my thickest backgrounds, because I try to keep them as small as possible, but you have some tan to represent like some of the dawn back here. This is supposed to be like part of the mountain, just trying to make it more textured. But then you have the clouds with all the scribbling, and you know, on its own, this looks pretty good. And then you combine this, and it's kind of like, what exactly is going on? But I admit, Book 8 probably is not my best build, but I think it does at least get the point across. So I guess the last part of this build is to pose the figures. Rand is a little bit difficult because of this sword angle. You have to kind of angle it in his hand, and if you angle it too far, it'll fall out. But his spear is also a little bit in the way, so you kind of have to lean him back. And then angle his sword so it's a little bit above the horse's ears. And there you go. There's Rand. And then the 2 bannermen just turn their hands so one of them's holding his saddle. The one with the red banner goes on the left, and the one with the right banner goes on the right. Then you have to pose the flag so it's kind of angled, almost touching the sword, but not quite. And same thing with this. You just got to kind of angle it to how you see it. Roughly that. And there you have it. Those are my builds for the bookends representing books 7 and 8 of the Wheel of Time. And, you know, I have to say, if I was to really rank all the builds I've shown you so far, I think I would have to rank book 7 probably number 2 after my Memory of Light build. Though I do appreciate all of the other builds that I have done before. I especially liked book 5. But anyways, that is it for this time. So, what do you guys think of these builds? Do you think that the Wheel of Time show is going to be great? Do you think that there's a better way to build these? And if so, do you think that you could build them? Like, it would be really cool to see what you come up with. Also, I just want to let you know that my LEGO Ideas The Wheel of Time project is still in its gathering supporter stage, and I believe it was 135 supporters since I last left it. My goal, since I have at least till December to continue to gain supporters, is at least 500, but if I don't get that far, like I've said before, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you continue to follow this series. Let your friends know about my project, and may the light shine on you and peace favor your sword.